Thank you, Tracy, Lisa, and Melissa. A lot of information. Thank you so much. We're so happy that you're working on it. Our next speaker, we're a little behind schedule, so I just want to let you know our next speaker wears many hats. She serves as a director on the board of the Hawaii Coffee Association. She's the president of the KCFA and the administrator of Synergistic Hawaii Agricultural Council. And she's here to give us an update. Please join me in welcoming Suzanne Schreiner.
Aloha, everyone. And Chris left out the fact that I also have a farm. So thankfully, I have a lot of support. I'd like to thank my fellow board members and my family for making sure that I do get off the farm once in a while. So I'm going to briefly overview SHAC, and I'm going to give way to Ralph Gaston, my board member behind me. I'm going to talk quickly about SHAC and our SCRI grant. Many of you have seen this slide before. I want to make sure you get to the beer bus in time, so I'm going to move quickly through these slides. SHAC has some changes this year. We added MacNuts to our board. They've seen the success with coffee and our other crops, and so MacNuts approached us and asked to join SHAC. So we've expanded this year, which is good news for all of us. The reason why SHAC came together was to have more power with USDA, so the more members, the better for us. And I'm throwing this slide up because it tags on to what Vern was talking about, which is our power. We are $150 million in roasted valuation. When you put a crop multiplier on that, that's almost $500 million in downstream valuation between sales, farm tours, roasteries, cafes, you name it. But we need to keep that in mind. SHAC's goal is to build the value of this brand for you through our various programs. So we want to raise the profile of all our regions. So I'm going to talk quickly about the SCRI grant, which stands for Specialty Crop Research Institute funding. And thankfully I get to follow the scientists, so I get to run through this quickly. So we have 9 consortium members in this grant. You heard from PBARC, you heard from University of Hawaii. We have 3 divisions of University of Hawaii. We have 2 with ARS, one includes Puerto Rico. We have University of Puerto Rico. We also have Purdue University and Michigan State. So we have a lot of people working on coffee leaf rust for us. It's $6.07 million. That sounds like a lot, but when you spread that over 4 years and 9 institutions and all of the issues we have to cover, it's really not quite enough, but it's a start. We have goals both short-term and long-term, immediate on-farm support for our growers with non-resistant varieties, and also funding for long-term variety trials. Part of this is extension, and I'm very pleased to say that we are able to give over $500,000 of that directly to Andrea Kawabata's program to get extension in the fields and out to us, the growers. So you saw Tracy talk a little bit about her resistant variety trials. We're also doing that in Puerto Rico. Part of that is documentation of how these trees do in the field. Part of that on the back end, in 3 years, we're going to do cupping trials. So that's not just with the scientists, but that's with industry-wide, so we can all taste how these do for us, whether it's in Kona or Kauai or Maui. We want to know that it works for us in the farm. We're also doing, as Andrea mentioned, clonal propagation with Mike Shintaku. And everything we do with our trees is going to go through Roxana Meyer's lab to make sure that if it's not nematode resistant, that we know we need to graft our trees. One of the gaps we have in the funding, because with $6 million it only goes so far, and as we start to do the research, we're figuring out we need more support for some of these areas. One of them is, as Mike Shintaku's lab grows out these varieties, where are we going to stage them next? They start out as little tiny embryos on the right-hand side in these Petri dishes, but as you can imagine, they need to go into a greenhouse, and then they need to go into pots, and quickly you start to space out quite a large amount of space that we're going to need. So this is a big gap for us. How are we going to do that as a growing community? Shack applied for funding under the Hawaii County Build Back Better Regional Challenge Grant. Hopefully we'll get funding to build a greenhouse and some staffing for that to help the grow-outs. But we won't know for another 6 months. I'll keep applying for grants. This is a big gap we have to fill. The other part is equitable distribution. How do we share these plants with the community? USDA is going to have a microscope on us. We need to figure out a plan as an organization, as a community, so all farmers have a fair and equal access to these plants. Are we going to do it by lottery, wait list? I don't know yet. I need to have these discussions with all of you, HCA, all of the member organizations, and the farmers who aren't represented. So for these varieties that need to be grafted, how are we going to manage that many grafts? Third question, I don't know yet. We're going to have to figure it out as we go. Objective 2, you just heard from Melissa. We're doing quite a lot here in Kona. We're also doing in Puerto Rico. We're doing in Ka'u. Hopefully we can compare this data and get some answers for these questions. So this would be Melissa. This would be Luis. You just heard from them. The third stage of this program, of course, is getting this information back out to you, because the knowledge we bring in doesn't matter if it doesn't get back to the farmers. So that's where Andrea comes in. The objective 3, which we didn't quite talk today about, is the second half of that field survey and monitoring, which is specific trials on fertilizer, pruning, and different management techniques, and what makes a difference for us if maybe we need to fertilize 6 times a year with smaller amounts, maybe we need to prune in a different style. This is some of the data that's being collected as we go forward. And once again, back around to extension with all of this material. You heard Lisa Keith and also Andrea talk about another aspect of this, which is the fungicide trials with Chang and Julie Coughlin. This does not overlap with the IR4 program. This is alongside. This is different chemicals. So this will give us a wide range, probably a dozen different chemicals that they're trialing between the IR4 program and the SCRI grant. And as needed, we will pursue special needs permits so the farmers can use them. Something that's happening in Puerto Rico is field and lab tests on a fungi called Lecanicilium. And when you think about 10 years ago, we didn't know what Bovaria is. Now we all know what Bovaria is. Lecanicilium, think of it like Bovaria for coffee leaf rust. We don't know yet that it works, but there are commercial products with it, and we certainly hope that this is something that will be beneficial to us over the long run. So they're doing that testing in Puerto Rico because they started that program 2 or 3 years ago. So hopefully we'll have results on that pretty soon. Stepping back, the previous research was all applied research, which means it's in the field to benefit the farmers. We also have some high-level 30,000-foot research, which is foundational research on the genome of coffee leaf rust. There's so much we don't understand. Vern talked a lot about the research gap, and they're just beginning to understand how CLR reproduces and how we've ended up with 50 varieties. We don't understand this yet. So part of the SCRI is funding this research, which will have big implications for how we breed and what we can put in our fields that might be resistant to rust over the long run. Another aspect of this is being done in Puerto Rico, and that's they're sequencing the DNA between resistance and non-resistant trees to try and find the gene that allows a tree to become infected by rust. Once again, this is really interesting foundational research that may have breeding implications down the long run. Won't help us next year, certainly, but some of the science has to look longer than that. And the fifth aspect and I want to make a specific call out here, is the economic part. All of this data that's being collected is going to go into a model to help us better understand, as a farmer, is it more beneficial for me to replant my trees? Can I do this through field management? What's that going to look like for my specific location? This is going to be done through Michigan State University. The MSU economists are here this weekend. I'd like to point out Mywish Meridia here in the corner. Tomorrow, her counterpart, David Ortega from MSU, will be here as well. I would like you to please seek her out this weekend. Seek out David. David is going to be here for about 5 more days. If you'd like to give him a farm tour, I would love that. We want your input into what matters to you economically, and the best way for you to do that is not to talk to me, but to talk to Mywish specifically. We need large farms, small farms. We need the roasters involved. We need the processors involved. We need the full breadth of the industry so we can understand what's going to happen here with coffee leaf rust and how do we move forward as an industry, as a farmer, in the best possible way. That's my brief overview. Please hit me up this weekend if you have any questions. I'll do my best to answer them. And I'm going to turn it over to Ralph, my wonderful board member from SHAC.
All right, aloha, everybody. Thank you, Suzanne. Let me back off the mic a bit. Geez. So what I want to do to finalize everything is kind of do an update with what's happened with the SHAC program, the MAP program specifically. That's our market access grant. The Hawaii Coffee Association pays a 10% copay to SHAC every year, which helps cover office costs, administrative costs, and that 10% covers this grant. So the grant normally is about $90,000 worth that we use to target our export markets, which right now are China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and that 10% helps to fund everything in the grant. So I want to kind of show you what's coming with that. And first, I'm going to take a brief trip a couple of years ago to show you what we've been doing in this transition period. So this is from 2019, when we had a small delegation from the Hawaii Coffee Association go to the Taiwan Coffee and Tea Show. They were our new target market as of 2019, Taiwan, China, Hong Kong. And we had a plan to have a booth here in 2020. We had a plan for a reverse trade mission in 2020. I think all of us had plans for 2020, and all those plans kind of went away, as everyone knows, because of what happened with COVID and the resulting shutdown. So it's kind of hard to do face-to-face consults with people that you're trying to do business with and promote Hawaiian sales when you can't see anybody. But in the interim period, we did try to get some events going to keep ourselves in front of the buyers and make sure they still knew about Hawaiian coffee, because there was definitely some interest there. This picture here was something we did in November 2020. We worked with the Hawaii Department of Business, Economic Development and Trade, otherwise known as DBET, to host a virtual trade show. And we had 30 attendees at this show, both virtually and in person in Taipei. You see some of them here on the slide. 23 of the attendees were Taiwanese coffee companies. It was a great way to kind of maintain our contacts with the industry during that year. We followed it up in May of 2021 with the Taiwan Trade Mart, which was another virtual coffee show. This one was hosted by the Agricultural Trade Office in Taipei. And this event brought about 20 attendees. It was supposed to bring 30, but they had had a COVID outbreak in Taipei at that time. They had to cancel last minute. But it was still pretty successful. We had more than 20 leads out of this, and we actually did have one company come back and make a successful business partnership and make some sales off of this. So it helped us to stay in front of the people we wanted to stay in front of, because we'd found in Taiwan, much like Japan, if many of you have done business in Japan, being in front of your clients repeatedly to establish contact and trust has been key to making sales. So from there, our biggest success at the end of 2021, even though we weren't able to physically travel, was to have a booth at a trade show again. So this is our booth at the 2021 Taiwan Coffee and Tea Show. And you see the picture there, Emily Scott with the shaka up. She is part of the Agricultural Trade Office in Taiwan. And in the middle is Sabrina Rin, who was our liaison in Taiwan. And they really helped to make this booth happen. It was important for us to have a presence, a physical presence, to get our coffee in front of people there. Because of the travel restrictions, we couldn't physically be there. No one from Hawaii could attend, but we were able to send coffee and materials, and we got some really good results. We connected with 93 coffee professionals at the show. We had 7, actually, not just 6, trading companies from Taiwan that ordered Hawaiian coffee. We made over 1,200 direct consumer contacts, and just from this, we were able to generate about $50,000 in sales to the Taiwan market, thanks to what we were doing. Now, that 50,000 number could be a bit deceptive because we need information from everyone here. So if you sell coffee into Taiwan, or if you sold in the past year into China and Hong Kong, please let us know in the Shack office. I know that sometimes we don't always share business because we're looking at the same people sometimes, but there are ways that we can collect data for sales with Shack that don't involve opening up things that you might feel are sensitive to business, but definitely let us show the USDA that the money is being used well, and let us show everyone here in the association it's used well to promote your businesses to the buyers we're running into. And the more that happens, the more money we can get, the nicer the booth can be, and the more sales we can hopefully do. So letting us know is a really important concept, so please do it. We can talk later about how to make that happen in a way that's comfortable for you. Now that 2022 is here, skipping to the present, we actually did have another trade show, and this is the one in Boston, the Specialty Coffee Association Expo, which just happened last month. This is the first time since the 2019 SCA show that Hawaii actually had a visiting delegation at a trade booth, and it went pretty successfully. The show had over 10,000 attendees, and it was a good way for the industry to kind of reconnect with each other. But, you know, for us, since things are kind of opening up again, it's kind of only the beginning. So I wanted to end this kind of give you an idea of what's on tap for the rest of 2022. We have a bunch of things that we're trying to work on. Some of these were projects we had lined up in 2019 and 20 that have rolled over, and now we're ready to implement. The first one I wanted to talk about was the video project that we're going to feature different Hawaii coffee regions. We have some videos we've shown in the past. The footage is anywhere from 2 to 22 to maybe 42 years old. It's way overdated. It's not in HD. It's pretty old. So what we do is we have money set aside to get new video from all the different regions so that we can showcase everything up to date and make it look as good as possible and reflect the kind of coffee that we're serving folks. We have a video project that's going to feature our HDOA certification process. So and when we go through the process of bringing the coffee to the mill and having the HCA certifiers, will be Randall and Jasmine coming over, and they certify the coffee. The buyers we talked to in Taiwan were very confused about that process. They wanted to know, how do they know what the certification entails? What does it mean to have a stamp? How does this work? So we want to have a video to show everything from A to Z, and we're going to have that rolled out the fall of this year as well. We're going to have a new website to promote exports that is going to be a place where exporters can kind of figure out more about the association, and the association can figure out who's interested in Hawaiian coffees. We're going to have a bilingual account manager for both China and Taiwan. They do need to be separate. I know we're short on time, so I won't get into the details of why, but they're going to be 2 separate ones there. And we have 2 big events planned for this fall. The first is a reverse trade mission, where we're looking to bring buyers from Taiwan and China here to the Big Island and also to Oahu, to travel around, see the farms, meet the processors, maybe a few roasters, cafes, get them to come back to Hawaii like everyone else is and understand what we have to offer here. And then in November, we are going to have another HCA booth at the Taiwan Coffee and Tea Show. 2 big things that will change here. This one will be a bigger booth, and we're planning to have a small Hawaii contingent there, so that when they do have questions about Hawaii coffee, we'll be right there to answer them and to connect them with the regions and to give them a list of the people that are interested in selling, and hopefully facilitate more sales for everybody and make everybody happy about the way we're presenting Hawaii coffee. So it's been a challenging year for everybody, a challenging couple of years, but I think we're on the other side of it, and that gives you a brief overview of the MAP program to this point. If you have any questions, please come find me in the back here, and I'll be happy to answer them. But until then, on behalf of the rest of our SHAC team, our other SHAC board representative, Madeline Longoria Garcia, who is kind of all over the place doing things, which you might see her in here now, and Joan Ober, who is our grant writer, and she just helped finish up this year's UES grant, and she's submitting it, so she can't be here. So on behalf of them and on behalf of Suzanne and the entire SHAC board, mahalo everybody for your support.